And so I then think about adoption into Web3, and people say, well, look, gaming is a big gateway into Web3. Yes, but ultimately, payments is the mass adoption gateway into Web3. And if you know about WeChat and how it's used in China, it's obvious that's what it is. And that's where I think, if we can build a product that helps people come into it that way, then I think it's hugely successful. And I think Telegram has a good opportunity to, become a WeChat, not even clone, but even exceed WeChat. I'm convinced it can.
Guys, welcome back to the show. Today I have a fantastic guest in the studio, which is Steve, co-founder of Fintopio. And your background is incredible. We're going to dive into it. But before we do so, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to get into the conversation.
Amazing. Likewise. So for those that don't know you, I will link in the comments down below, of course, your Twitter profile, which I love.
Thank you.
And if you don't mind, can you give us an intro and tell us a little bit about yourself?
I guess in many respects, I've had several careers in my life and several sort of story arcs that go all the way from working for some of the world's largest companies in the most corporate environments to now being a co-founder and employee number one of a new Web3 startup. So I've had that real range of massive companies to very tiny ones.
That's incredible. I mean, I had to write them down because there are so many, like CMO for BNB Chain, Global VP of Marketing for Binance. So those are big names. And like you said, it's interesting to see swings from maybe like a solid, gigantic corporation to a small, super agile Web3 company. I mean, what do you think the challenges are for entrepreneurs nowadays that want to build a Web3 business?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is I was really fortunate to work in some of these really large companies because it gives you a discipline and the opportunity to learn from some really brilliant people. For example, really early in my career, I worked for the likes of Meg Whitman, who was very famous for scaling eBay. I worked with John Donahoe, who's the CEO of Nike. I worked for Toby Lutger, who's the founder of Shopify. So you get to work with these really interesting, highly talented people. And that was a fantastic learning experience. But what I realized working in those big companies is, because I was not fortunate enough to be in there as early as the early days, that it's very hard to make a true difference in a company that's already running at 100 miles an hour. And so what I wanted to do is go up into earlier in careers and start companies and actually help them gain speed. So I joined a Chinese tech startup, was employee number 9, and we went from 0 miles an hour to 1,000 very quickly. And I wanted to replicate that in the Web3 space. So after working at Binance and BNB Chain, where again I got to work with some really brilliant people, CZ and He included, I felt now was the right time to jump out there and get into the startup business entirely from myself.
Telegram is the weapon of choice for Fintopio, right?
So Fintopia its very core form is a Web3 wallet. But what it is today is not what it'll be in the future. And I think you mentioned Telegram there. It's super interesting because there are already many wallets out there. And we are, in a sense, no different from those. But what you see is, let's compare, for example, WhatsApp to Telegram. WhatsApp is a brilliant messenger service, but it's pretty stable and static to where it is. It's moving a little bit forward. You then look at Telegram, and what the team are doing at Telegram is just accelerating it again, throwing so many new features at it that it's really WhatsApp plus, prime, gold, whatever you want to put on it, that's what it is. And that's what we see Fintopia as, is not just a Web3 wallet, but it's a Web3 wallet plus, prime, gold, call it whatever you will is. It's going to be, a really future payment gateway, financial infrastructure, as well as a wallet. And we've got the product roadmap and the skills to do that. So it's really going to be a super interesting evolution of what the wallet is today.
You said something interesting in one of the interviews you've done on another channel. You said, well, you don't have to be the first, to be the most successful, which I completely agree. If you rewind in Web2, which is probably where we are more familiar, not always the first who started something has become the most successful. If you are a no-coiner, as we call, someone who has no crypto, and you want to venture yourself into this universe of choices, it's so complicated.
I 100% agree with you. And that also comes back to my early days in working in the e-commerce industry. So, today, buying things online is normal. Back when I first started in the e-commerce space, it really wasn't. And what you saw was really the absolute mass adoption of shopping online. What I want to see Fintopio is exactly that, is the mass adoption of people paying via chat messaging, that I can send you money that I owe you for the coffee you made me this morning. I can just send that to your username on Telegram or WhatsApp, and here's the $10 that I owe you for that. And so mass adoption is the real key driver behind Fintopia. Is I go to many crypto conferences. I was here at a conference only this week, and I like to go in, sit in the speaker events and listen to people. It is so complicated, it's untrue. And I think I'm pretty Web3 savvy, crypto savvy, but I don't understand 80% of what people are talking about. And I'm not sure they do either. And so my goal is to make Fintopia simple for mass adoption, that my mother can send me money she owes me or vice versa. And to your point about user experience, it all comes down to user experience. Using a wallet like Trust Wallet today is still mind-blowingly complicated. It's just absolutely, and no wonder people can't come into the space. And so the ability to simplify the user experience down to its absolutely normal Web 2 standard even is really the goal.
I also believe, I don't know if you agree with me, but I believe I'm super excited about Web 3 specifically, because I mean, my journey was in Web 2. You know, as they say, Web 1 is read only, Web 2 is read and write, and Web 3 is read, write, and own. But when you talk to someone who doesn't understand or doesn't spend as much time as we do in the space, they're like, dude, I don't understand half of what you're saying. I don't understand this crypto thing. I don't understand why I need to download, and what is the seed phrase, and what if I forget? What is self-custody? There is a barrier to destroy. And it reminds me back in the days when we didn't have Google, we had Alta Vista, we had Netscape, there was a battle of the browser, we didn't have Google Chrome. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, fast forward, internet and email addresses are too slow. People don't use them any longer. They want to go into Telegram, into WhatsApp. Everything is fast, you know. And I think money has to follow.
Yep.
Like, we've not seen a currency per se following internet. And I believe what you guys are doing is amazing. Like, Telegram is going to offer a ecosystem for entrepreneur to build things on.
Yeah.
And they already have a user base. Millions of people are using Telegram.
Nearly 1 billion users, yeah, exactly. One of the reasons I perhaps accelerated my own learning towards, I spent some time living in China. And when you live in China, you have to use WeChat. And a big part of WeChat is payment process as well, WeChat Pay. So so already in that environment, I remember one of my first, my first trip to China was back in 99, but I was back working in China around 2016, 2017. And I tried to pay with a credit card. And even then, the people in the shop looked at, what the hell do I do with this credit card? Called their colleagues. How do I,
what is this
it
thing?
was already paying with QR codes. And there was a time back then when QR codes in the Western market were dead. They were seen to be really old fashioned. Mm-hmm. But in China, the adoption of QR codes was just absolutely massive. And so I then think about adoption into Web3, and people say, well, look, gaming is a big gateway into Web3. Yes, but ultimately payments is the mass adoption gateway into Web3. And if you know about WeChat and how it's used in China, it's obvious that's what it is. And so there are other gateways in, but payments is definitely the way in. And that's where I think, if we can build a product that helps people come into it that way, then I think it's hugely successful. And I think Telegram has a good opportunity to, become a WeChat, not even clone, but even exceed WeChat. I'm convinced it can.
I think so. Super well said. I mean, if you zoom out and you look into places where they don't have a bank account, for example, and they rely on mobile phones, and they only have like services they're allowed to transfer money, they take a huge chunk, and you need to go maybe to a physical location, sign, and do things. Now with a phone in your pocket, which is more accessible than a computer with a connection, you can transfer value in between two people, peer-to-peer maybe sometimes, with no third party involved. This is magic. And even on the ownership of things, like, I believe, besides game that you mentioned, which is so easy to understand, like, I don't play games myself, I'm not a gamer, but I understand how the dynamic works. If I play a video game and I buy the video game, and I owe my progress in game, and I owe my items in game, I can sell them.
Yeah.
And people have tried, like Blizzard had tried in the past to do a Diablo. There was an auction house thing where you would have gone into this RPG game, and wherever you kill monsters, you find items, you can sell them for dollars, but they got into trouble soon because the dollar wasn't designed to do these things. Yeah. So now, we will see companies coming in with solutions. They say, hey, you know what? You can play the game. You don't even need to understand. Immutable is doing some fantastic work on the passport option. You don't even have to think about configurations. And like with the iPhone now, right? You don't need to know how the Wi-Fi works and what the hell. You just need to connect into a Wi-Fi, put a password in. So I think we are witnessing a start or a beginning of a new phase, which is going to onboard millions of people.
Yeah, definitely. And I think on your earlier point, the point that I made previously is that you don't need to be first, because timing is absolutely everything. You can be really early with a great idea and it'd be the wrong time. But if you come late to an idea, you've got to make sure that your product's better than its previous ones. So I think, and that's why the great thing about Web3 is you can come in today and disrupt already a disruptive industry and be successful if you get your fundamentals right. And also, I think if you have a mindset of looking at those markets that you mentioned that are perhaps not as easy access to traditional global banking, whether it's India, Nigeria, Vietnams of the world, where technology has leaped forward, skipped traditional banking entirely, which is no bad thing, and they're looking for products for people just to simply, custody their own money, pay in their own way, use their own tokens, and they have that freedom and independence that they wouldn't have in a traditional banking system. And so that's why Web3, I think, the adoption is inevitable. It just takes time. It takes the right companies to build the right products.
You can see now on the Apple Store and Google Store, there's a bunch of companies trying to solve this dilemma. So how do I send you money? You can do multiple different things, but it's not crypto yet. And I think at some point it's going to become easier for companies to understand what is this thing and how does it work.
What I'm most excited about, just in my life in general, is I'm a very independent thinker. I'm a great believer in having a growth mindset and doing things and taking that responsibility. And I think what Web3 does is give people that power to be independent. And that's the bit that I really enjoy. And I think if you can give people a product, and then, for example, we said earlier about, sending money via username. My mother knows how to send me a message on WhatsApp. So therefore, she should be able to know how to send me money on WhatsApp or a messenger. And so that's the secret that we need to tap into. The process is already there, but the products need to come with it. And if you build a product, I think, that has the right user experience, that is, not free of controls, because you have to have compliance, you have to have all the legal things in there, but you have a product that people believe is there for them, then that's where you have that sweet spot, I think.
Do you own any crypto in your portfolio?
Yeah, I my first experience with crypto was around 2017 when I was working in China, because back then blockchain came super interesting. And some of the team decided to leave China, move to Japan to work on blockchain. That's kind of weird. And they went to work for the Cardano Emergo team. I thought, that's really interesting. And so I got to know a bit more about that. So that's when I first really started dipping my toe in that. And then, did a whole bunch of stuff. I proved to myself that I can't trade in crypto because that was that.
Don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Two of us.
Exactly. So I've got some stuff put away on a ledger somewhere. And then what I am is the projects that you see. So there's you look at now, the tap to earn thing's super interesting. I do like meme coins, because I think meme coins have a role to play. I think they do create a lot of noise, and I think they do put a lot of people off. I think is one of the challenges, one of the downsides of meme coins. But I just love seeing the creativity. I have a lot of friends who are now bringing some real IP into the meme coin space, which I think is super interesting as well. So again, bringing perhaps mainstream Web2 IP into this space as well, not just other IPs. So that's really good. Of course, we'll think about utilities of coins as well. I think a coin with a good utility is very important, and you can see more and more utility coins. I think stable coins are super, super interesting. I think we're here in Dubai, and there's more and more talk about central bank approving stable coins is really interesting as well. And then, of course, you then see a lot of Web2 companies playing with tokens. And I look back at that and say, well, okay, good luck with that. Maybe some will work and maybe some will won't. But I have an open mind about those. But yeah, I think, there's lots of really good tokens out there, really good projects. And there are some ones that are just, for fun only, right? And treat them as such.
If you think about who are now dominating the market, think about Amazon. Well, they were selling books. They now do everything but selling. They sell books, but I don't think that's the main source of revenue, I would argue. And they do also AWS, so they expanded massively. Yep. I think we'll see the same thing. I think we'll see blockchains establishing themselves for gaming, for certain things. There's going to be a market. I'm a Bitcoiner. I have next to no fiat on my name. That's my money. But then I also play with the market, because I believe there's going to be a rainbow of altcoins. Yeah. They're going to do something. They're going to offer services. But at the same time, I understand memes. I think they are amazing. They allow people to come into the space, to have a community, to form things, to discussions and everything. And there is so many people in so many different positions. And by the way, we are a tiny bubble. I think 3% of the population is invested in crypto at this point in 2024, which is nuts. So it is the beginning of the beginning of the beginning. So I think the last thing you want is box yourself into a box, which is into a box, which is into a box.
Exactly right. I totally agree. And that's why I think memes are super important. You see take the US election at the moment. It's happening. Of course, lots of noise around the US election, quite rightly so. But it's almost a meme war, right?
Yeah.
You've got two parties fighting a meme war against each other. And it's very powerful. A picture is worth 1,000 words, if not more. And a well-timed meme that may only live for several hours is hugely influential. And so I'm a great believer in memes. I think, they're much underrated by people outside of our space. But again, it's probably an entryway into this world that we inhabit, that other people looking and go, what the hell's going on? What does that mean? But they're very, very powerful.
If I have fun in doing something, well, that's a utility. It doesn't have to solve the financial, well, it's just a meme, right?
Yeah.
So I can go to the casino and throw a couple of things, dices, and win some money. Well, I'm having fun. That's a utility. So if there is someone who created a project who wants to have fun, well, why not? Who am I to say you can't do it?
Yeah, 100%.
I'm all about free market. Even, I don't know if you remember the battle on the ordinals and people, no, Bitcoin, just let it be.
Yeah.
Like if people want to build on Bitcoin, just let them build. If there is a market, they will establish themselves. Yeah. If there is no demand, the market will diminish.
Yeah.
Like that's how I like to think. Who am I to say you can't do this, you can't do that? Like you can't have an ETF, for example. No, why? I mean, I think that's my opinion. I don't know if you agree, but I'm all for the free market. If there are people that don't want the responsibility of having the keys in their hands, they can use a custodian. I mean, as long as you understand what you're doing, that's fine. And maybe that would be a vehicle for someone to get to know Bitcoin.
Yep.
And then maybe 5 years or 3 months later, they go, okay, wait a second. If I can self-custody, I'll take it. But as long as we have the option or the choice, I think it makes sense. And touching on the election quickly, like you said, it's fascinating for me, at least I'm not in the US, so I don't leave it as intense. But the whole thing is just fascinating to watch.
Yeah,
honestly.
Yeah, it really is. What also one of the key principles of Web3 is you've almost got that, no censorship, but you've got that openness to it. There's no controlling mainstream media that's controlling your access to it. So if you want to find information, it's there for you to find it, which I think is very important. So it's unfiltered. And again, that's another strength of Web3. You can find out about a project and you could find out whether it's built on real utility or just built on fun. It's there and it's open for you to see that. And I think I think that transparency is very important. I think it's a big factor on Web3.
If you are a shady individuals, you don't want transparency and decentralization. You want control, right? And centralization. That's why when people say that Bitcoin is responsible for crime, I'm like, well, first of all, the dollar is the number one item used for crime activities. And number two, if I have a network which is open and transparent and anybody can verify it, I mean, I would like to use that.
Well, again, I was exactly thinking the same thing as you were talking there. I remember when I worked at Binance, one of the big targeted at Binance by mainstream media was that crypto is used by criminals. Well, look, only got to look at the banks and what they're doing with fiat currency to demonstrate that blockchain proves you can trace any transaction. You may not know who the owner of the wallets are, but it's entirely traceable. And so it's so much more beneficial. And again, that's interesting why China was interested in blockchain, because back then in China you had to provide paper receipts for everything, and that's why blockchain adoption in China was very fast, because it solved the problem for them. And I think it saved many, many more problems for sure.
I think Bitcoin is a vehicle. Everyone should be able to interpret as they wish. It's an ecosystem where I take what I want, what I need, but there might be someone else who use it for something else. Yeah. And who am I to prohibit and say no? Of course, there's going to be criminal activities on the blockchain. Yeah, I mean, there's criminal activities everywhere. So it's humans. We do this stuff. So we can't remove it, sadly. I mean, it's not necessarily Bitcoin's fault or the dollar's fault. It's a service, and people are going to try to be shady on the service. But we don't have to, I think, put the finger on the service itself. Technology is always neutral. It's how we use technology that becomes evil, no?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, and back to a previous point, you were talking about the adoption of crypto, and crypto adoption is very much tracing internet adoption, and they're very much working in parallel. But crypto is almost back to where we were, where internet was in 2005. So still a long runway to go. And there is many use cases for Web 2 and the internet, as there will be many use cases for Web 3 adoption. We are just still early in that respect. And I think, we're probably 15 years behind, Web 2 adoption, which is tremendously exciting. When we look at the revenue potential of likes of Fintopia is, where in 15 years' time, imagine how many users Telegram's going to have. That's 1 billion today nearly. It's going to be, 15 billion plus and so on. And so the opportunity to ride that and bring our products to people is just enormous.
Do you also believe that in 10, 15, whatever, it doesn't matter how long, we will have people being paid to consume content. Because if you think about the big data, when you sign up for an email account or you use social media, it's free, but you are the product. But they are monetizing on my data. So do you think we're going to see companies successfully building a service which basically means I can download and watch videos and get a token as a reward?
Well, what I've learned in my career is never to say that's never going to happen, because as soon as you say that's never going to happen, it goes and happens. But it's a great example of where tokenization helps. Micropayments that in fiat don't work because they're too expensive to transact. Micro tokenization is really a big opportunity. And again, it's how we're looking at things in a different way than a more traditional mindset. And that's what we're talking about here, is how you undo something and really break its components down and start thinking, reversing it out, which you're doing with your example. And so, never say never, right?
You have the crypto, like hardcore, self-custody in one corner. You have then the ETF holder on the other hand. And I think we'll see like a sea of different profiles merging one another. And I agree, and I think the majority of the money, I don't think the user necessarily has to understand, it has to be decentralized. I don't think it matters.
No.
For 99% of the people, they just want to have convenience. So, for example, the money transferring thing. Okay, I owe you money for the coffee, done. That's my problem you're solving. I don't need to understand, is it Telegram, is it Ton, is it Ethereum, gas fees? No, just like focus on the problem, right? So sometimes I think we are in a phase where we are overcomplicating everything and we are forgetting the most important thing, which is the end user. It's like, how can I solve this problem in the most fast and efficient way for the user itself?
Yeah.
Then it will be adoption, because then I don't even have to explain. It's like, well, I send you money. That's it. You have Telegram.
Yeah.
Yes. You have a wallet. Yes. You owe me $2. Done.
Yeah.
You don't need to think about, but it's Telegram, it's Ton, it's Ethereum. I don't know if you are the same.
Yeah, I think it's no secret that Binance is the number one firm in this space, because CZ would every single day talk about the user. Whatever the user wants, the user is right. And that, and again, but then we go to these conferences and everyone's pitching their own individual slice of the pie. And in some respects at times, crypto people are their own worst enemy, because they want to portray their own product. They want to push their own, ideology. They're overly complicated. They want to say how smart they are because they're talking this really, complex language. My brother doesn't care about that. My wife's sister doesn't care about that kind of stuff. And so, we kind of overcomplicate it. And so back to that, focusing on the user is absolutely critical. And that's what, when we worked at Binance and CZ was there, that it was drummed into you, and you had to go and spend time, even the senior leadership team had to go and work on the customer support desks. You had to do your time every month, working calls, solving problems with the user, and nothing keeps you more user-focused than being on the end of a web call with someone who can't do their KYC or has lost their coins or whatever. And so that's really important. That comes back from Web 2. Web 2 is really great about being user-focused. You mentioned Amazon earlier, really focused on the user. And so that's where perhaps a lot of crypto folks who maybe should be spending more focus on. I totally agree.
I have also spent a lot of time in Web 2. I built a lot of stuff. And I remember back in the days when I was advocating for a user testing lab, for talking to customers, and there was always a comment from the client, I don't have budget. And I'm like, well, this should be your priority, because you don't even know what the heck are you building, right? And maybe your idea is not going to work. So it's fascinating to me, because when I think about blockchain or crypto, who's working in crypto blockchain? Well, it's either developers, which are furthest away from the customer. They build things, they work, but they are not usable. Or you have designers, which are the other opposite of the spectrum. It looks amazing, but I can't use it. That's why user experience kind of came up. Say, hey, I can connect you guys, I can. And then hopefully help talking to people, understanding the problem. And it becomes like a triangle of talents. They have to find the balance and solve issues.
Yeah, I mean, you have to eat your own dog food. That's what you have to do. And I say it to the team a lot, and I'm often the first person to find a bug on the design, because I'm always in the app. That's a really important thing. And so if you do that, again, I got involved in a not a Twitter spat, but a conversation with it. I was trying to sort of buy a financial product for the family, and the user experience, they put the chat but over the confirm button, right? And whoever designed it clearly doesn't use their product. And that's just really mind-blowing to me that people, don't do that, and people should do that more and more, because otherwise, it's madness. The other thing there's another thing I don't know who said it. Someone said, I don't have time to be brief. Right, so
I love that.
being simple. I think someone. If you want to write something, it's easier to write a 10-page email than write a 2-line email. So being simple takes time, and as a UX designer, you'll understand that. In that, it takes ages to strip things out. I mean, again, I work with Meg Whitman. eBay just bought PayPal, and Meg just said to the team, reduce the word count on the website by 50%. That was her entire. Just do that, right? Just take 50% of the words out. Okay, everyone stared at why, because she's trying to make it simple. She's trying to get the point over people, make it simple. And that just takes time. And that's why a lot of people don't spend the time to simplify things. So I'm a great believer in simplification.
People have no time to waste. So whenever they have to go somewhere or learn something specifically new, think about you jump into this wonderful blockchain universe, you understand literally nothing. The last thing you want is complicated things in your face, passwords and seed phrases, and you just want to keep it as simple as possible. I mean, as well as it was extremely hard to dial into internet in the early 90s or late 90s, it was expensive. I couldn't use my phone at the same time. I had to go through a 20 minutes process. Downloading was terrible. And people are saying to me, well, this is not going to go anywhere. Yeah, but it's as it is now. But in 20 years, people they won't have this problem because they don't even have to think about it. They just need to know where the Wi-Fi is and what's the password.
Yeah. I mean, I have a Starlink internet system at home. I have no idea how that works, right? But it's incredibly fast and works amazingly. But the important thing I do know is I know the Starlink team have spent a huge amount of effort making it simple. I mean, putting satellites in the sky, but that's really complicated. But they've done that so I can enjoy the simplicity of it all. And so we have to, as the companies, solve that simplicity, complexity dynamic, that paradigm. If we do that, then it makes life easier for the user.
Where do you see we're going in Web3 in 10 years?
I see we're going to almost removing the word Web3. It's just, I'm paying you money, I'm paying you a token. This is what tokens I have. That's its value in that respect. So I see it rubbing out very clearly. I think the implications of AI is going to be really important in the space as well, because there'll be so much that'll be automated. I think that's really interesting space as well to be in. But I see it rubbing out the concept of Web3 in general. It'll just be, a parallel or an independent financial network that's operating alongside the fiat network. And I think people will choose the different use case. They will use fiat for some things and they'll use tokens for others. And it'll just be normal practice for them.
Digital collectible. That's how they was NFT, right? But I didn't want to say NFT because if they say NFT, it will come with a kind of a segue of history.
The baggage.
Exactly. But if you say digital collectible, okay, that sounds cool. What is that? Yeah. Well, it's an NFT, but I'm not going to say it because it's something else. So I agree with you. And I think we will also have banks accepting Tether, accepting USDC or Coinbase. It's going to be easier. I actually read on the news last week, there is a bank in the UAE who's planning to have Tether sent on your balance. That's massive. Yeah. So that means I can go in and out of stablecoin from my bank account.
Yeah, and there'll be those banks and markets in the world that will be earlier and faster adopters, and that will drive growth elsewhere. Now, will we see US banks, Northern European banks in that effect, probably slower down the line? There's no coincidence that markets like the UAE and Dubai are vibrant and growing and entrepreneurial because the environment for them is to be that. So that's where I think if you are a fast-growing market today, you have a very innovative and open approach to technology, and then it's your opportunity to really grow and jump ahead.
I agree. Steve, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it so much. Thank you for your time.
Likewise. As always, in the comments down below, I will link Steve's profile. Make sure to check it out. See you guys on the next one.